Okay, so next coffee shot. Thank you for watching my previous video, which having 15 questions, and from now we are talking about the 16 to 40. Okay, that's a very interesting question. The question talking about what is the primary objective of enterprise risk manager consulting on design and implementation of mitigation controls. Option A, minimize the risk. So question talking about primary objective, they need to consult on design implementation of mitigation of control. Okay. So option A, to minimize the cost of control. It is not necessary that every control that we are implementing, it is basically reduce the cost. Option B, ensure risk is managed to an acceptable level, which is true because when we're talking about any enterprise risk management, the first thing we called as a risk capacity. The first is basically called as a risk capacity. Second is basically called as a risk tolerance. Sorry, risk tolerance is the current level. The second is basically called as a risk appetite. So risk appetite is a level of risk the organization willing to accept. So when we say ensure risk is managed to an acceptable level, mostly it is called a risk below the appetite. Okay, so current risk is basically your risk tolerance. Is it going beyond the appetite? It is okay, but if it's going beyond the capacity, it's a concern. Option C, it say to automate all the control process. That is more from an automation perspective. And option D is say to ensure the risk. Okay, I repeat, the question D say ensure the risk reduced to a low level. No, question is basically what is low level? Understood? The question is basically to what low level? Low level can be anything. So low level can be my within the appetite capacity, that is a low level. So that is not something we define. So definitely we removing A and we basically removing C. So we left with B and D. Reduced to low level can be anything. We have a risk right now above the appetite but low level. But the risk is basically what is there is if risk is left after implementing control and bring the risk below the appetite level. So that is something is called as a acceptable, because any risk above the capacity we avoid and any risk below the appetite we basically accept. So in this case, the answer is basically B for beta. Exactly. So B for beta we have. Okay. Let's move to the next coffee shot. Thank you. Okay. Another interesting question. An enterprise risk manager monitoring key risk indicator. What is your primary objective when you identify changes or trend in the IT risk profile? So question is talking about when an enterprise is planning for a KRI, and during that time, what is the primary objective when you identify changes or trend in the IT risk profile? The question is basically, talking about the KRI. So in my previous video, part 1, I discussed about KRI, KPI and all that. Okay. So option A, to directly implement changes in the IT security measure. Okay. See, that is not a primary objective when you are defining a KRI and all that. Option B, to notify the IT department to take a immediate action. It's not necessary every incident we have to take an action. Option C, to provide actionable intelligence that support the proactive risk management decisions. That is also true. And option D, to provide compliance report for regulatory bodies detailing a current IT risk status. See, D is also okay. See, A and B removed because it is not necessary. We need to notify only IT department. So in that case, that is basically removed. Now we basically left with the option basically C and option D. See, when we're talking about KRI, okay, KRI is basically providing me metrics to improve my risk management, and it is something we create during a risk response stage. Okay, risk treatment stage, when you basically mitigating a risk, or so we have to monitor that. Question says that enterprise risk manager monitoring KRI, and what is the primary objective when you identify changes from the KRI perspective? So answer is with the help of KRI, you can able to take a decisions. D, I'm eliminating because I'm not creating the KRI only for regulatory bodies. It is talking about if the senior management objective, risk management status, then answer is D. But only talking about for regulatory body does not make sense. So based on the KRI, we can able to take a call. And that is the reason answer is C for Charlie. C for Charlie. Okay. C for Charlie. So before I basically move to the next question, so this is the example we have. KPI basically show the efficiency and effectiveness. KGI portray the management goal. And KRI is basically the indicator based on which we get a visibility by what percentage we could not able to achieve a defined goal. That is why in this case, the answer is basically C for Charlie, because KRI basically help you to identify what we have achieved and what we have not. Okay. Let's move to the next question. Thank you. Trust me, it is one of the best question I like. See, question is talking about governance, question has a word sequence, and question also talking about to test your consulting knowledge. Okay. Now question basically say that you are an enterprise risk manager responsible for oversee the control environment within the multinational company. So that is the first keyword. Recently, your analysis of KPI has revealed the downward trend in the efficiency of certain operational controls, which could potentially increase the enterprise risk. It means we have a control, let's say example firewall, and it could not able to detect future incidents. So, or current incidents. So in that case, my KPI is basically went down. So when KPI down, the KRI is basically increased. KRI basically by what percentage it is not detecting you. And if there's an increase in the KRI, there is a decrease in a KCI, there's a decrease in a KPI. So which of the following action most appropriately for you to take? See, when you implement something to reduce the risk, and we monitor with the help of KRI and all that, right? So option A, direct the IT department to enhance the affected control by implementing advanced technological solution. Definitely we can direct the IT department to enhance the affected. But the question says which of the following is the most appropriate for you to take next. It means we identify there's a decrease in the operation control and increase in the KRI. So option B, they say propose a review of existing control framework to the senior management and support initiating a target audit focus on area where shows declining a performance. We can go with this option in that case because it is a cost effective also, and we can able to target those area which is there is a decrease in a trend, which is think like a manager. That is the best answer from cost effective point of view. Adjust the risk appetite of the company to align with the new trend as a temporary measure until new control can be developed. See, risk appetite, risk capacity we define on a strategic level. Our goal is to bring the risk below the appetite. We don't need to readjust the risk appetite. We have seen the pattern that, okay, current KRI is exceeding the appetite. It doesn't mean we will increase the risk appetite or decrease the risk appetite. We have to play around risk appetite only. Option D, implement an immediate replacement of all the tool used for monitoring KPI to ensure most accurate data collection. Might be it is true, but it is comes from the business approval. But that is not a next most important step. So first, as a think like a manager, my role is not to implement anything, but I can basically propose. So in that case, answer is basically D for Delta. Propose a review of existing control framework to senior management and suggest initiating a target audit focus on the area showing declining performance, because that by that way you get a visibility what area you need to focus. Understood? So that by that way you can able to focus that area. That is the reason answer is B for beta. Okay, so let's move to the next question. Thank you. Another interesting question. As a part of enhancing your organization risk management framework, you choose hybrid risk assessment approach that combine the realistic input values or input values. Give me a second. Input values and of qualitative assessment. Qualitative is basically mean high, low, medium, and all that. That is basically called as a qualitative assessment. Okay, let me increase the font. Yeah. With the numerical scale, which is a quantitative in nature. So we have a two type of analysis team. One is basically qualitative and one is basically called as a quantitative. Okay, qualitative is basically high level, which is faster. If you're looking for a faster decisions and all that, you can go for the qualitative. But if you're looking for the accuracy and all that, then you will go for the quantitative. Okay. The question says here is, they want a hybrid risk assessment approach. They want to combine the realistic input typical of qualitative assessment with the numerical scale of quantitative. So they want to include both. The goal is to provide the scale wide enough to assess the risk in a precise manner, which is a quantitative such as 0 to 100. What type of risk assessment are you implementing here? See, if you see the option A, qualitative assessment, here the risk is mapped to high, low, and medium. Quantitative is basically number, but they're looking for both. There's nothing called as a comprehensive risk assessment. So answer is basically C for Charlie, because semi-quantitative is a combination of both, where we use a qualitative also and quantitative also. So first we basically come with the quantitative, and then we basically map that with the high, low, and medium. Example, if we found the value 100, then 100 is equal to low. If we found the value 120, the value will be medium. If the value is 150, the answer is basically high. So that is the reason answer is basically C for Charlie, semi-quantitative, which is basically the combination of both. Okay. Yeah. So answer is basically, so answer is C for Charlie, semi-quantitative risk assessment. Okay. So let's move to the next question. Thank you. Another interesting question. in preparing for an upcoming enterprise wide risk assessment session, you opt for a method that classify risk using a relative values on scale of high, medium, low. This method heavily rely on the experience and expert knowledge of the participant. What type of risk assessment is this? Option A, quantitative. Definitely no, because in quantitative we're using a value called high, low, medium. Second is called as a qualitative, definitely, because here we map the value with high, low and medium. Option C, semi-quantitative, that is a combination. And D is called as strategic risk assessment, that is more from a risk assessment activity. See, qualitative risk assessment we can perform in that case when I'm in the company for the last 10 years, 15 years, I have experience, I know, okay. So we give the category like that. If any impact is basically, so let's say we're creating a table like that of the likelihood, and we create a table of impact. So we say if this event, example threat, is going to exploit the vulnerability once in a month, the value will be low, the value will be high. If it's happening 6 months one time in a 6 months, so value will be basically medium. If it's happening once in a year, the value will be low. So impact is, if it's compromise the PI data, the impact is high. If it's compromising operational data, impact is medium. If it's compromise basic policy and all that, impact is low. So we just mapping with medium high. So likelihood is basically high because this activity happening once a year, and impact will be compromise of PI, so value is high. Or likelihood is basically happening in a month, impact is basically also high because it compromising the data, so overall value I give value high. So this is basically called as a qualitative risk assessment. So whenever I'm looking for a faster decisions, faster analysis, I will definitely go for the qualitative risk assessment. But if I replace this with A, B, C, D with numbers and all that, then answer become a quantitative. Okay, but in this case answer is you can say B for beta. Exactly, B for beta. Yeah. Okay, so let's move to the next question. Thank you. An enterprise risk manager. As an enterprise risk manager, you are conducting a risk assessment for a new projects. Okay, you're conducting a risk assessment for the new projects. You decided to use a method based on the numerical calculation, such as monetary value, to estimate the potential loss and also determine the probability of a risk event. This method relies on the number aimed to provide the precise data and making an informed decision. What type of risk assessment is there? Definitely not a qualitative because we need the numbers. Semi-quantitative is a combination. There's nothing called as strategic risk assessment. So answer is basically B for beta, which is called as a quantitative risk assessment because in that we have a numbers with us. Okay. Yes, exactly. So numbers are basically so answer is basically B for beta. Okay. So always remember one thing, whenever the question talking about faster, then qualitative, high, low, medium. If this keyword is there in the exam, if this keyword is there called medium, high, low, so answer is basically called as a qualitative. But on the other side, the numbers are there, precise data is there, more time is okay, but they want to take an effective decision. So answer is basically quantitative. Okay. So let's move to the next question. Thank you. It's actually an interesting question. As an enterprise risk manager involved in the initiation phase of the software development lifecycle for a new enterprise application, you emphasize the integration of a risk management activity. What is the primary benefit of incorporating these risk management activities at this early stage? See, always remember one thing, whenever you're introducing security as early as possible to save cost, if you're introducing a risk management as early as processes, so we save cost, save time, and more important thing is that to introduce risk management as early as possible, it helps you to take the better risk management decision. Remember that from exam point of view. It is always good to introduce risk management as early as possible, security as early as possible, so you can able to take a better risk-based decisions. Now here they're saying primary objective. It means first, option A, ensure the project remain within the allocated budget and timeline. It is not necessary actually if you introduce a risk management as early you can able to make the things within a budget and timeline. Sometime it can go above that, so that is not a primary thing. Option B, guarantee all legal regulatory requirements are met by the software. It is not necessary that okay, enterprise risk management we are only introducing for legal regulatory. Option C is identified risks are used to support the development of system requirement, including a security requirement, security concept of operation, which makes sense because risk assessment help you to drive what controls are required, and based on the control we document what functions is required. Option D says system security features should be configure, enable, test and verify. That is more like an operational role. So in this case, answer is basically C for Charlie, because if you're introducing security and risk management as early as possible, you can able to save time, you can able to take a better decisions. Okay, so that is the reason answer is C for Charlie. So let's move to the next question. Thank you. Okay, next question. As an enterprise risk manager, you are evaluating your organization resilience strategy, system backup and restore procedures are essential component of the strategy. These procedure can be best classified as which type of control. See, we need to understand one thing. When you implementing any control in the organization, right, you need to first understand the primary objective of this control. Let's say example, we have a preventive control. Now this control was introduced with the objective of prevent the incident or prevent the event. Example, firewall was basically introduced to make sure no external traffic should enter. Now if it occur, then we have a detective control, detect the incident. But if it's already occur, then we need a corrective control. Okay, so resilience is introduced so that if there's a downtime, we can able to continue. System backup is there because if file is deleted, we can recover. Okay, so question says that because before implementing control is basically called as a preventative. After incident, we have a detective and we have a corrective. So corrective is to restore the things. Like if you take example, antivirus was introduced to prevent the virus. That's why we introduced that. Security background verification of the candidate before we hire him. It's a preventive. But if he done some bad activity, we have terminate him. That is a corrective action. So corrective will come into the picture after post incident. That's why it is part of a countermeasure. Option A, preventing control, that is not true. Option B, detective control, it is used to detect. But resilience is basically all about continue in the case of disaster. Even disaster mean already incident occur. Deterrent control discourage the user. Okay, in the description box I will share the control type video that give you better visibility. So in this case, answer is basically C for Charlie. Why? Because when you're talking about C is basically provide better visibility. Because corrective control is basically come into the picture after the incident is occur. That is the reason answer is C for Charlie. Okay, so let's move to the next question. Thank you. Okay, in the context of effective change control model to ensure proper security controls are adequate, changes are systematically reviewed by the change advisory board. Ultimate goal is to make sure the change should not compromise security and it introduce the integrity and make sure the change management process document the change. That's the reason. So what is the primary benefit of this review process? Now which review process? It means effective change control model ensure proper security controls are adequate, changes are systematically reviewed by change. So are we talking about why we need this process? Option A, it ensures the changes are implemented rapidly to keep pace with the technological advancement, which is not true because sometimes change management delay the process. Okay, I'll tell you one thing. So let's say example, I'm conducting a CRISC training. So this is the company suppose which is called as a KK. Okay, so we have scheduled the training to be done online. So I use Zoom, they also use Zoom, but on firewall they have blocked this port. Next day I raised the concern, we could not able to run the trial because we could not able to start the Zoom. So L&D team, learning and development team, they inform the IT that the people cannot able to join the session. Later on we investigate on the firewall, we have to open that port. So we have raised the change request for that. So we request for the change, then we verify the change, we validate the change, we analyze the change. Okay, by enabling this port, what is the impact? If I don't enable, what is the impact? So this take time. Okay, so we have a review from 1 to 2 days. So definitely, so it eliminating the A statement, it is not something make the things faster. By this, we ensure that, okay, whatever changes we are introducing, it is assessed with the help of security and everything. That is the reason we have a change management process by which we can able to track the change. So option B say it confirm the change request does not unknowingly affect the organization risk or security posture, which is true because in a change management process, we have one clause which is called as a security impact analysis. So any kind of a change you are introducing, Okay, it need to go through a SIA. Okay, by introducing this change, what is the impact? If I don't introduce this, what is the impact? Option C, it facilitate the documentation archival for all change for regulatory, but it is not only for regulatory. And option D, change is scheduled at the time convenient for the business, which is not true actually. Sometimes we have an emergency change also. So in this case, the answer is basically B for beta. Exactly, B for beta. Okay, let's move to the next question. Thank you. Another interesting question. Who are the most crucial stakeholders involved in reviewing the risk response option to an IT risk when addressing the identified risk event? Option is CISO. CISO is basically presenting a risk. CISO is basically presenting his threat and vulnerability reports to the CRO. CIO basically help you with the controls. Okay, Chief Health Officer or Chief Helping Officer is the one who ensure the operation. So ultimately, it is a CEO who approve everything. So always remember, whenever you selecting any approval process, always select as highest as possible. Because if you see the hierarchy is like that. If you see the hierarchy is like that. So we have a first board. Board basically appoint the senior management. Senior management basically appoint the CEO. Then under the CEO, we have a CRO. And then we have a CIO. Then we have a CISO. So CISO presenting all the information security risk to CRO, and CRO will basically presenting the enterprise risk to the board, senior management, CEO. Question was saying that who are the most crucial stakeholder involved in reviewing the risk response option. So we as a CRO, CIO, CISO are the custodian. We present the risk. Okay, but who accept what to mitigate? It is always come from the CEO or board. That's the reason answer is D for Delta. So let's move to the next question. Thank you. It's a good question. Which of the following is the best facilitate the cost-effective risk response? Option A, prioritizing and addressing risk in alignment with the risk management strategy. Option B, transferring risk on the basis of risk likelihood and magnitude of impact, which is also true. Option C, performing a countermeasure analysis for each of the control deployed. And option D, select controls that are low the risk. It's a very good question actually. Now questions say cost effective risk response. See, first we have a risk identification. Second is basically called as a risk analysis. And third is basically called as a risk evaluation. So when you're evaluating a results, okay, we map this with the appetite, tolerance and capacity. Tolerance is the current risk. So we can see the current risk is basically above the appetite. Can we apply the control to bring the risk below the acceptable? That's a mitigation. Is the risk tolerance is going beyond the capacity? So during a risk evaluation stage, we use the risk management strategy, and risk evaluation is always basically use a risk appetite and risk capacity parameter, and based on that it take a decision. So option A, it says prioritizing and addressing risk alignment with the risk management strategy, which is true. Option B, transferring risk on the basis of risk likelihood impact, but that is only one aspect. It's not necessary by transferring we can have a cost effective. Option C, perform the countermeasure analysis for each of the control deployed. That is also true. And selecting control that are low the risk, that is also true. But question is basically what is a low? So C, if you're going for counter analysis, we have to see is the risk is going below the acceptable level. If I'm going for selecting control that low to the risk, but question is the low is below the appetite level. So C and D is part of A. Ultimately, based on the risk alignment with the risk management strategy, we can take a call. So whenever we respond to the risk, we always map with the appetite and capacity of the function. That is the reason answer is A for alpha. Prioritizing and addressing risk align with the risk management strategy, which include my risk appetite and tolerance and everything. So let's move to the, so answer is basically A for alpha. Yeah. Okay. So let's move to the next question. Thank you. Okay. Most effective starting point to determine whether IT system continue to meet the enterprise business objective is conduct interview with. Now question talking about, see, we always follow top-down approach, no doubt in that. Okay, in this they're talking about what is the best way, what is the most effective starting point to determine whether we meet the business objective. So for the interview perspective we have option A, executive management. See, if the question say first effective starting point, then answer is executive management, because executive management focus on high-level strategy and may not be involved in day-to-day operations from the IT system support. They can provide insight into strategic importance, overall business goal, but they may lack detailed usage information on the business process functions. Option B, IT management. See, while IT manager are deeply knowledgeable about technical aspect of system, they might not have a complete understanding of alignment with broader business objectives to compare to business process owner. Option C, business process owner. These are the individuals who directly manage and oversee the business process and the IT system support. So they have a first-hand knowledge of how the system affect the daily operation, and their insights are crucial. Option D, auditors. See, that is from an independent assessment perspective. Okay. However, auditors are generally not focused primarily on whether system meet the internal business objective. They say overall risk and everything. Okay. So in this case, answer is basically C for Charlie. Exactly. Let's move to the next question. Thank you. Another interesting question. During a review of recent incident, you as an enterprise risk manager identify several events that were not adequately addressed, leading to minor losses. How can KRI be used to best enhance the risk mitigation strategy in future? So question talking about lack of monitoring actually. So question say, okay, in the past, there are several events has been identified which has not been addressed properly. So how the KRI can be used, because KRI providing an early indicator. So proactively you can able to take a call. See, when you're riding a bike or you're driving a car, so there is when you're driving a car, you will get one notification if you have a less fuel. So that is a KRI for you. If you don't give further attention, the car gets stopped, that impact the performance. So at least we have a reserve meter, but in the old car, we don't have a reserve. So it is difficult to track when the fuel gets gone and all that. Nowadays we have a fuel meter also. So question is talking from that point of view, how KRI can use to enhance the risk mitigation strategy, because we creating KRI during a response and treatment stage. So option A, by providing a baseline for risk acceptance decision. See, KRI is not only used for the risk acceptance. Okay. KRI is not only used for the risk acceptance. The second is basically called as by offering a detailed review of past financial performance. See, while reviewing the past performance is useful, but KRI are always looking for forward indicators. Okay, they want to predict the future events rather than analyze those have been already occurred. By providing a trigger, C option, by providing a trigger for investigating an event or providing a corrective action, definitely. So this is the best use of KRI, because they mean to signal when thresholds are breached, indicating need for investigations or immediate action to prevent. Option D, increase the frequency of executive risk review. See, although increasing review frequency can be beneficial, but it is not a primary function of KRI. Reviews are broader, where KRIs are specific metrics which is designed to signal potential issues. So according to that, answer is basically C for Charlie. Okay, so let's move to the next question. Thank you. Another interesting question. In your role as an enterprise risk manager, you focus on fostering the robust risk culture, you can say, within your organization. How do KRI specifically support the development and enhancement of the risk culture? See, risk culture is a foundation for any organization who want to build the enterprise risk management, because if you have a culture, then only the company can take a risk, right? They have a culture of taking risk. So risk culture is a foundation. So questions say that how do KRI specifically support the development and enhancement of risk culture? See, KRI you can expect a lot of in the exam. KRI questions can be expect a lot of in the exam. Okay, so that's why in my video I have talking about the KRI. Option A, by defining a strict guideline that limit employee decision making. See, this can create a restrictive environment, because that might discourage the initiatives and risk awareness which are important in the robust risk culture. So strong risk culture empower employee to make informed decisions, with a certain risk framework, rather than just limiting a decision. So it's a negative statement. Option B, by facilitating audit and compliance check. See, while audit and compliance check are important, they are not typically the domain of KRI. KRI are more about ongoing monitoring rather than periodic review, like audit and compliance check mails. Option C, by helping the organization focus on important relevant area. Definitely that is true, because KRI basically help me track what to check and what to not to check. But option D say providing detailed technical data irrelevant to the most employees. See, providing early technical irrelevant data does not support risk culture. Robust risk culture required employee at all level understand and engage with the risk management principle, which meaning that information provided must be relevant and understand to them or understandable to them. So if you basically see the logic, I will go with the answer, C, because KRI basically help you to track. KRI is basically help you to validate. And KRI is basically useful functions. Okay, so that is the reason KRI should be actionable, understandable, and make sure it should be aligned with the organization day-to-day operation. So by focusing key area, the KRI basically helps the organization to anticipate and respond to the risk proactively, which is essential for maintaining a strong risk culture. And that is the reason answer is answer is C for Charlie. Let's move to the next question. Thank you. Okay, another interesting question. And I love this question because it's one of my favorite. As an enterprise risk manager, you utilize KRI to ensure alignment with the company strategic objective. How do KRI best support the organization risk appetite? I repeat again, as an enterprise risk manager, you utilize the KRI to ensure alignment with the company's strategic objective. How do KRI best support the organization risk appetite? Risk appetite means level of risk organization willing to accept to pursue mission and vision. Okay, so if you take example, option A, it say by ensuring compliance with legal regulatory requirement. See, compliance is critical, no doubt, but it is not directly related to the organization risk appetite and strategic objective. Compliance indicators are often distinct from KRI, which is always strategic in nature. So A is not an answer. B, by validating the organization risk appetite and risk tolerance, definitely a good KRI is the one which can be see whether we have attained the KRI or within the appetite, within the capacity and all that. So that is the most important part, because questions say how do KRI best support the risk appetite. So we can see, okay, current risk indicator is going beyond the appetite, below the capacity. So we can able to take the effective decisions. Okay. Option C, by facilitating the communication between technical and non-technical staff. See, while communication is essential, but KRI themselves are not a tool for facilitating the communication. They are metrics. So they are metrics. Okay. And option D, by automating risk response options. See, automating the risk response may be informed by the KRI, but KRI alone do not automate the action. They inform the decision making that might lead to automate response. So the close answer is basically, yes, the answer is basically B for beta, because by that we can able to validate whether risk appetite and tolerance have been defined, because KRI are the metrics usually actually, or you can say specifically, helps the organization to face whether risk is within the appetite and tolerance level, and they designed to give early warning and enable the organization to ensure risk in line with the organization has decided it can accept and pursue the business objective. That is the reason answer is B for beta. Okay, let's move to the next question. Thank you. Okay, another interesting question. So the question is, enterprise risk manager, as an enterprise risk manager, you have conducted a risk assessment, past tense, okay, which indicate that the residual risk associated with the new application program is within the organization risk tolerance. It means we have accepted the risk because risk is below the appetite level. Now, considering the future integrity and performance of this application, what is the recommended next step? Option A, implement awareness training for new application user. See, while training is important, okay, training is basically important, no doubt in that, because question talking about indicate residual risk associated with the new application program is within the risk tolerance. Now, when I say within risk tolerance mean, so we have a risk capacity, we have a risk appetite, and risk tolerance mean within the appetite. So anything below the appetite we accept, but we need to monitor, right? So just awareness training will not be that fruitful. Okay, it is a proactive measure that would typically be implemented before we rolling out the application to user. It does not directly address the ongoing management of application risk. So that is the reason we eliminated A. B, say reduce the risk tolerance. Definitely reducing the risk tolerance is not necessary as a direct step after finding a risk is within the tolerance. It is a strategic decision that would be based on the broader consideration of the organization risk appetite and would not likely to be response to a single risk assessment. Option C, identify logs and source of threat and vulnerabilities. Definitely this action is a part of an ongoing risk assessment process. While important, it is not direct next step after risk assessment has been completed unless new information suggests that they are understand or they are addressed threats or vulnerability. But option D, say implement monitoring to detect the control ineffectiveness. So I'm going with the answer D, because continuous monitoring is a key to ensure controls remain effective over the time and application continue to operate with the acceptable risk tolerance. If control is effectiveness degrade, it could lead to the residual risk exceeding the organization threshold is basically defined. So that's the reason is once the acceptable level of residual risk is achieved, the focus should be monitoring to ensure risk is remain within a defined risk tolerance. And that is the reason answer is basically D for delta. Okay. Let's move to the next question. Thank you. Another interesting question. As an enterprise risk manager, you are conducting a preliminary risk assessment to inform the upcoming strategic planning session. Makes sense. This assessment include evaluating risk before considering any existing control or mitigation strategy. What type of risk are you primarily assessing in this particular phase? See, option A, residual risk, is a risk which is left after implementing control, but we are in a stage of assessing. Inherent risk is something which you there in the system before implementing, before treating the risk. So risk before implementing is called as inherent risk. Third is basically called as a strategic risk. Strategic risk is basically all about strategic aspect. An operational is basically more like an operational activity. One more important risk we have is which is called as a control risk. Control risk basically means the control that you implemented, but it is not working effectively. So answer is basically inherent risk. I will tell you the reason. See, question saying that this assessment include evaluating risk before considering any control. So before control is an inherent. After implementing control, the risk is which is left, that is called as a residual. So in this case, answer is B for beta. Okay, let's move to the next question. Thank you. It is a very interesting question actually. The question is, in your enterprise risk management, you identify high risk scenario involving the potential regulatory change that could severely impact the organization primary revenue generation, and also identify high risk scenario. Okay, given that the risk cannot be mitigated, fine, because might be the control cost can be high and whatever the reason, and given the risk cannot be mitigated to an acceptable level, fine, no doubt, nor transfer. So which risk response is the most effective to ensure the organization continuity? See, they know that okay, a new initiative will impact the revenue generation. Second is they are not in the position to they are not in the position to mitigate, and they don't also have option to risk transfer. Now, when you're talking about risk capacity and risk appetite, okay, so if your risk, just give me a second, let me draw the scenario. Okay, see, if the risk is basically beyond the capacity, if your risk tolerance is going beyond the capacity, in that case we always prefer to avoid the risk. So in that case, we basically avoid that opportunity that bring risk to the company. We apply the control. Now control can be applied in two ways. One is basically technical control or administrative control, which is lead to the mitigation strategy. Or second is we transfer this impact to basically third party, which is called as a financial insurance. So that is also kind of an impact transfer. And after implementing control, the risk is left, that is called as a residual risk. If it's below the appetite, we accept. Now in this question, the question says that risk cannot be mitigated to an acceptable level, okay, or not transfer. So option A, risk acceptance, that is not possible because risk cannot go below the acceptable level, so that is removed. Mitigation is not possible, transfer is already defined, ignore. So answer is basically B. We always remember we go for risk avoidance in that case when the risk tolerance is beyond the capacity, okay, and we can accept the risk in that case when the risk is below the appetite or the cost of control is higher than cost of risk, okay, or the cost of opportunity is higher but the cost of impact is less, but we can take a risk, okay. So in this case, answer is B for beta. Let's move to the next question. Thank you. Another interesting question. In the context of managing Supplier related risk. You have decided to use contractual agreement that include the clause for indemnity and insurance agreement. Now keyword itself saying that indemnity and insurance agreement. Okay, indemnity insurance will come into the picture when you're talking about cyber insurance. This approach is particularly critical for managing risk associated with the outsourced services. Why is it essential to ensure these agreements are actively maintained, especially in the context of their efficacy immediately following the incident? Option A, risk acceptance. That is not a primary reason. Risk avoidance, we don't accept the risk. Mitigation, we basically reduce the risk with the help of control, but as we involving the insurance, or insurance is like a transferring the financial impact to third party. So answer in this case will be the risk transfer. One more important thing before I basically go for risk transfer, one thing we need to understand is risk transfer will be in that condition when likelihood is low but impact is high. I repeat, likelihood is low and impact is basically high. So in that case, we basically go for risk transfers. Let's take example, you take a health insurance. Why you take health insurance? Because the likelihood is low, but if you get admitted, you get direct impact on the pocket. So you want to transfer the financial impact to third party. Okay, that is why in this case we selected answer is risk transfer. So let's move to the next question. Thank you. Another interesting question. An enterprise risk manager, you are evaluating a various risk security control to implement in response to newly identified risks to your organization data integrity. Which risk response is achieved through the implementing security control that significantly or specifically aim to reduce either the frequency or impact of the risk? Option A, risk acceptance. In risk acceptance, we don't implement. We accept the risk associated with the initiative because opportunity is high. Avoidance, we avoid the business, but in this case, we evaluating a security control for the risk which is exists in the organization. So B is removed. D called risk transfer, you're transferring the financial impact to third party, but here the question specifically talking about the controls. So answer is basically risk mitigation. Risk mitigation is basically the initiative where we implementing control to reduce the risk within an acceptable level. Let's move to the next question. Thank you. Another interesting question. An enterprise risk manager, you understand, just give me a second. Yeah. You understand the significance of fostering. The keyword is fostering a robust risk culture. So we're talking about integrating a risk culture within your organization. What plays the most significant role in shaping and comprehending the organization risk culture, thus enabling the efficient risk management practice? Okay, so question talking, what is the most significant role in shaping the culture? Option A, implementation of advanced risk analytic tool across all the business unit. This is basically applicable when you're doing a risk analysis. Second is transparency to external stakeholder. What about internal stakeholder? B can be great if they say transparency to their internal, external both. Option C, engagement in the risk communication activity to align all level of organization with the risk management objective, which makes sense. Because if you bring everyone on a common page, that can make better sense. And option D, communication of a risk incident. Just communicating risk incident will not help you to build the culture. The most important part here is basically C. Because engagement play a very important role. You convey the meaning. What is the purpose of strategy? What is the purpose of policy? Why we have an appetite? If you engage the risk communication activity at all the levels, strategic, tactical, operation, you can able to bring more insight. And that is the reason answer is C for Charlie. Let's move to the next question. Thank you. Again, an interesting question. Okay, so an enterprise risk manager, you are tasked with enhancing the risk culture of your organization. What is the most effective initial step you should take? See, whenever you want to implement enterprise risk management in the organization, culture is a base. Culture basically talk about the company's attitude. Culture is basically talk about how the people will take that particular risk, how they perceive the risk. So question say, what is the most effective initial step you should take? Option A, develop the comprehensive training program for all the employees focusing on risk awareness and compliance requirement. Definitely, if you want to build the culture, you need to be very clear with the why. Okay, that is the first most important thing. Okay. Second is initiate a series of risk communications workshops. Okay, specifically tailor to middle management and address the identify gap in understanding. See, This step is important but is more effective after baseline of risk awareness has been established on the organization wide. It focuses only on middle management where the risk culture need to be ingrained at all the level. Okay, that is the reason we are eliminating B. C say redesign the organization risk management framework to incorporate stricter controls and oversight mechanisms. See, this may be necessary, but without risk-aware culture, even the best defined control or best designed control can be ineffective. So risk-aware culture should be precede or go hand in hand with the framework design. And option D say increase the frequency of internal audit to ensure compliance and raise awareness indirectly through the audit finding. Again, we can go over the D, but this is more like a monitoring step, not an education culture one. Okay, so answer is basically A. Develop the comprehensive training program. I'll tell you why. So this approach is actually a foundational because it promotes the shared understanding of risk throughout the organization and also prepare employees to act in a way to support the risk management framework. So risk culture implement with the help of awareness, and risk culture is a base of a risk strategy, and risk culture is basically great with the help of risk communication. Okay, that's why the answer is A. So let's move to the next question. Thank you. So next question is, which of the following is the most useful for information security professional to build for business continuity? See, business continuity directly deal with availability. See, when you're preparing for a C-risk, right? I've seen a lot of people get confused with risk assessment, gap analysis, BIA. So this question, will give you the clarity about what is the thin line difference, all three. Question saying most useful. See, business continuity talk about the strategy. Business continuity talk about how to continue the business in the case of disaster. And that is only possible when you move the business from one location to other location based on a recovery strategy. So always remember one thing from exam point of view. For if the question specifically talking about business continuity, BIA is basically the most important plan they have. Okay. So BIA is basically a tool that is basically help you to prioritize what need to be recovered and how quickly we can recover. Okay. So that is a one important aspect we have. Risk assessment is only talk about what is a threat, what is a vulnerability, but we need a controls, but the controls will become in the case of impact. Gap analysis come into the picture when we're talking about the current state and desired state. And lack of visibility this don't make sense because lack of visibility is not a statement of most useful, to be frank. So here the answer is basically BIA. I will tell you why. See, BIA will basically tells you about potential incidents and any related. So let me delete this. Just give me a second. So BIA basically tell us about potential incidents and any related business impact. Where the risk calculate the probability of a compromise, BIA determine the consequences of compromise. So BIA is the one who ultimately create a report the stakeholder use to understand the business impact. Okay, that various incident will cause. And gap analysis in the context of risk management refer to determine the gap between the existing control and control objective. Let me explain you how. See, let's say example, this is the business 1, this is the business 2, this is the business 3. Okay. Now we identify threat and vulnerability which can lead to this downtime. We identify threat and vulnerability which can trigger this downtime. Threat and vulnerability which trigger the downtime. And from there we basically got the value of impact. Okay, this is the impact. If you could not able to store in 4 hours, this is the impact. If you could not able to restore in 5 hours, this is the impact. And if this is could not able to restore in 6 hours, this is the impact. So I want to treat this impact first, then I need to treat this impact second. So BIA basically helped me to prioritize the impact. And we decided to implement the control. Now what is the current control and what is the desired control? So then we do the gap assessment. I don't want to start from zero. So first we basically do the risk assessment, identify threat vulnerability with the business. Then we do the BIA to identify the impact and prioritize the impact. And then once we decide the control, we do the gap assessment. So whenever any question talking about current state and desired state, answer is gap assessment. Risk assessment is a driving factor, but whenever the question specifically talking about BCP, from BCP perspective, BIA is the one which is the most important step we have, which help you to prioritize the recovery strategy, because BIA will tell you what need to be recovered and what need to be recovered later. So let's move to the next question. Thank you. So last question. Enterprise is considering whether to allow employee to use bring your own device for the business purpose. Acceptance is facilitated by the information security manager applying common business case aspect throughout the acceptance process. Which of the following is a primary factor in senior management decision? First of all, let me tell you the exam pointer. And any question in the exam talking about the most effective way to secure the data in a bring your device is encryption. And the solution that we're using to manage the MDM is bring your device is MDM. So any question talking about managing a device, answer is MDM. Any question talking about most effective way to secure the data and bring your device, answer is encryption. Why? Because if tomorrow device lost or all that, still we basically maintain the protection of data. Now here the question is, they want to convey the management for BOYD. So what is a factor we need to consider for senior management decision? Identify the budget items so the senior management can quantify the cost, which is true, no doubt in that. B, monitoring and auditing measures. Definitely we need to define that. Risk assessment detail is very, very important because it talk about risk and initiatives. But the most important thing is that any kind of initiative you're introducing, make sure it should be aligned with the business objective. If it's basically aligned with the business objective, it always have approval. So always remember one golden principle in CRISC or CSM exam is anything you want to get convey, it need to be present in form of business case. And business case basically include how this initiative align with the business objective, what is the risk, what is the cost. So answer is basically D. So this is all from my side, team. Do let me know how do you find my video, and do you let me know does it useful while preparing for series. And if you clear the exam, do give credit if you think it's worth. Otherwise, okay. And I could see that, okay, you have not subscribed to my YouTube channel. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss my future videos on similar topic or further topics. Thank you so much. Good day. Bye.